Good evening, everybody. This is the Community Preservation Act Committee. It is October 1st, 2025. Hard to believe that's October 1st, 2025. I have exactly 5 o'clock. This is a Wednesday. This meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.eastham-ma.gov. And we do have a quorum. And so I'm going to go directly on to item number 2 of the agenda, the discussion of the 3% surcharge, the wastewater project. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who I want to thank you for putting this information together for us.
Thank you. Welcome. And thanks for having me here. I can't think of the right word, unfortunate perhaps, but, with a little bit of a heavy heart, they come to talk to you about this, because the CPA is such a great program. Has done a lot of great work, even when it was the old Cape Cod Land Bank back in the day. My job as a finance director, when all these things come up, like wastewater, is to kind of balance the needs of the community versus the various revenues we have. So, here to just start the conversation on a potential proposal that, if we would move forward, would result in a article at town meeting. The community would have to approve any change to the CPA, and likewise any adoption of a new fund.
Janet's got her hand up. I'm sorry?
Janet has her hand up.
Oh. Hello, Janet?
Yeah, we still don't have the visual
Oh,
of town hall.
Thank you, Janet.
okay, we will work on that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Wayne will check it out for us.
Thank you.
Thank you for telling me about Janet.
So, there's no doubt the CPA has been successful, but when it converted from the land bank to the Community Preservation Fund in 2001, I think, or 2000, it had a 20-year timeline. So it's either 20 or 21 that timeline expired, sunsetted, so to speak, which allowed cities and towns across the state to make changes to whatever was adopted back in the initial time. Since that time, I think it was around 2017 or so, the state also created legislation and has a law in the books now that allows for the creation of a water and wastewater investment and infrastructure fund, which I'm just going to call WIF, appropriately named. And that is similar to the CPA, and that allows for a 3% surcharge. So that's always been an option for several years now, as towns around the Cape have been contemplating funding wastewater development and infrastructure. Except most towns, when they consider it, aren't considering adding keeping the CPA surcharge of 3% and then adding a whole nother surcharge for a total of 6%. There are several communities, and I have to go back, and when we try to maybe get to a final consensus, if people want this information, I can get it. But Yarmouth has implemented it, and I was actually there when they did it, and I think it was a 0.57% reduction in the CPA, and then a 0.57% adoption of the WIF. Dennis, I believe, did it with a 1% from a 3 to a 2 on the CPA, an adoption of a 2% WIF. So they increased the overall surcharge from 3 to 4, but split it 2 and 2. And I believe Sandwich is doing it, and a couple others if they haven't done it yet, are contemplating it. Usually starting at a 1.5 and a 1.5, which is what I'm kind of talking about for now, get this discussion rolling. And I have some information to show you what that might look like. And I'm planning to update the select board on Monday as to this, so they'll kind of get the update. And then Mary, perhaps we can do this at the next finance committee as well. With the idea of trying to get to a consensus or a plan as we finalize the budget in January, February, so that we can prepare for anything we need to do for town meeting. So the front page has a series of years, 2025, 26, which is the last 2 years actuals. And I haven't tied it out to Tina's book, so I don't know that it's perfection, but it's certainly close enough. And the top shows the property, this shows the actual surcharge percent of 3% for those years, and the actual dollars came in each of those years, 25 and 26. Of course, we got matching funds, so reading down those columns, It was an 18% match and almost a 16% match in 26, giving us the matching round money of, not insignificant amounts, 180,000 or so in each year. And then we qualified, since we're 3%, we qualify for round 2, which is the equity round, and round 3, which is the surplus distribution round of some declining percents. For total state matching of 241 and 240 in 25 and 26. So you can see the total revenue was 1,000,002, a little bit higher than 1,000,002 in 25, and just about 1.4 in 26. And then the blue line, kind of in the middle of that page, should be contributions to the WIF, which obviously we don't have, so there was none. So the total surcharge was 3%, and those are the total revenues associated with our surcharges on the green. So one potential, and I I meant to mention one other thing. When I looked at the wastewater funding plan, it was a challenge to identify all the funding sources that make it affordable to the residents and the taxpayers as possible without overburdening, those that have to connect versus don't have to connect. And in those projections, I used a projection of the WIF, because this was back probably even before 25 when I started that. So I've always kind of carried the number of $600,000. So 600,000, and I've just held an even number throughout the years of the projection. This shows some funding in excess of that, which we'll talk about in a second. And if we were to start that in 2027, and I have a little note there, note 1. I don't know that we need to do it in 27. Perhaps we could delay this an additional year and start it in 28. We could look at that. But this projection shows it starting in 27. Our tax levy is estimated to be $43.3 million. So a 1.5% surcharge generates about $650,000. We would get the state match for what we charge, so that would go down, but it'd be $103,000. I'm using the same percentage that we had in 26 for the next future years.
Yeah. And that's something that changes frequently. That percentage changes. I mean, over the last couple of years, it's gone from 18 to 14, and one year the legislature added 20 million in addition to the deeds
And back in
numbers,
the day, when there were fewer CPA communities, it was
Yeah, right.
much higher, right?
Right.
I don't think we're going back to those days. Will this legislator add some more money? That's a thing, and then I don't know how to.
Probably not now. I mean, that's the way I'm reading things.
So using that same percentage, 103 on the match, we would qualify in 27 for round 2 and round 3 because we participated in 26. So the total revenue would be about 786. I'm
As
gonna
compared to the 600,000 you're talking about.
Well, I'm going to round up to 800 just for talking purposes here. So 800,000 CPA revenue versus 1.4 from the prior year. So a drop of about $600,000, right? And then the next year in 28, the amount that we collect locally would continue to increase because our levy increases. We would continue to get the round 1 match, but we would not get the round 2 or round 3. I got the numbers there just so I can add them up down below, but they're not in the 775.
Right. It's the 668 and the 106.
Right. Then conversely, down below in the blue, starting in 27, we see the amount going to the WIF, 650, 670, and going up all the way to the end of 2032 to just under 800,000. So in green, you see the total surcharges townwide. And then below the green is kind of the revenue foregone.
Because we're not
'Cause we're
taking
not-
the 3%.
So we're not getting 3%, and if we had charged 3% in 27, the state would have matched an additional 1.5%. So we're foregoing 103,000 of revenue, which continues for each of those years, obviously. But starting in 28, we're foregoing the round 2 and round 3 distributions as well. So it's not an insignificant amount of money that we're foregoing from the state. So one thing I contemplated when I put this together, as I told you, my projections for wastewater relied on $600,000 consistently. And by 2032, the WIF is up to $788,000.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that prevents us. We can only change something once in the course of a fiscal year, but nothing prevents us,
You're talking about percentages.
percentages, from changing it year to year. That might be a bit much, but I
Mm.
would submit that perhaps 5 years out, in 2031 or 32, we might be inclined to want to revisit this allocation again. And so I won't necessarily consider this a forever thing. And I guess the way I'm phrasing it is, and folks can agree or disagree, we have a finite amount of money, a finite amount of times we can go to the well being our taxpayers to
Mhm.
pay for things. So perhaps it's appropriate to kind of reprioritize how we're spending our money. And, that's a contemplation for the committee here to consider with the work you do. And I guess the final little piece of my presentation here before some questions, I'm sure, is I looked at the CPA revenue from 28 through 32, so that's 5 years. That's 4,244,000 is what the projected revenue. Now, I don't know what you have on your horizon and whatever applications you might get, but if you flip the page, went back the prior 5 years to see, what have we spent? And I'll just cut to the chase along the short of it, and then we can get some details. Very bottom right,
4.2.
other than things that we set aside, the last 5 years, we spent just about $4.2 million.
Mhm.
So I don't know if this is a correct statement, but I'll say it this way for discussion. The amount of funding that's projected
Mhm.
would support the level of spending, not forgetting inflation for a minute,
Past.
that's been in the past. And the one thing I haven't accounted for in here is we do have currently just under $2.4 million in the various reservations and undesignated fund balance that could also supplement this. I kind of, on this second page, broke it out between private applications versus town applications. And certainly, this is a funding source for eligible town projects. But if we were to do this, I think then we would have to look to our capital budget to supplement some of these things. So, Mary, from being on the finance committee, in our capital budget now, we have an annual amount that we fund, for example, the town hall repair and
Yeah,
maintenance
yeah.
account. If we had been doing that, if I'd been around 10 years earlier and had been doing that, we might not have had to come to CPA for
Mhm.
the work that was done on town hall, for example.
Mhm.
So
It was.
Yes, please, make sure.
So, I mean, you projected this through 32. Do you think this is just gonna go on and on until wastewater is complete?
the projection for how to fund wastewater with the least amount of impact to property taxpayers was to utilize $600,000 in the WIF. So that's why I mentioned up front, I don't need the 788
Mhm.
to meet those projections, all things being equal. I think that represents an opportunity as this grows, if we want to get back to.
But I guess the question I'm leading on to is that if we agreed to move forward with this 1.5%, could it be like revisited in 2 and 3 years? Cause so we could look back to see what impact it had on CPC?
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say here.
Every year.
So in, 2031 or so, we might not need a 1.5% WIF. So if we want to keep the overall 3% surcharge, we don't want to go beyond that. But we don't need a 1.5% WIF. Maybe it only needs to be a 1% WIF, and we go back to 2 on the CPA. And there might become a time where we
Yeah.
get back to 3.
I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, by cutting the funds in half, how's that gonna affect applications? And things we can fund and move forward, in the next few years.
Well, it's gonna cut them in half. It's gonna cut them in half.
Yeah,
yeah,
What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
We're taking from Peter
And I
to
don't,
Paul.
I'm really not opposed to that.
Right.
I just think that, this committee, every year or every couple of years, is gonna have to look at the impact this has on CPC, and now is it worth us to, you know? Of course, the other thing is, if you got a negative vote here, would you still move forward? Would the town still move forward with a warrant?
Well, I think ultimately that's a select board call, what they want to
Mm.
put on the warrant, but I'm sure they're certainly going to be looking to your recommendation and taking that into consideration, so. So you're the first stop and the first time we've had this discussion, so
Mhm.
we need to, I don't want you to take a vote tonight. I want you to
Right.
think about it. If you have more questions, we can come back and keep talking about it, but.
Mhm.
I think one thing this came up at our last meeting, just to, your point about how is it gonna affect future CPA? The two major priorities that we've been putting forth is, and this is reflected in our funding allocations, is housing and open space. And those are the two things that are most directly affected by without doing wastewater. I should say, doing wastewater is, once we get that rolling. So I mean, it's kind of like, even though we're diverting money from the CPA towards wastewater, in my opinion, we are still funding CPA in the two priorities, because we can't do the housing without the wastewater, and obviously the open space environmental
Mhm.
protection for the open space, so.
Not so much on the open space, Paul, but, and I don't want to get too far afield in this discussion, but when we've had some discussions internally lately on housing, potential housing projects we could do, large scale at tea time, for instance, or smaller scale at 580 or some other home. And, the thing that keeps coming up in my mind, not that it's not appropriate for CPA funding, but is it appropriate in the sense of 80% doesn't get you anything if you're trying to do 80% of AMI. We the focus might need to be more on the workforce housing, in which case CPA funding of those projects probably isn't appropriate because that's not going to let us do what we'd like to do. So I can't guarantee or tell you this is going to happen, but it's in my mind that if we're going to do some sort of housing program or project, that might be funded otherwise, other than CPA.
Mhm. I guess one of my concerns is not concerns necessarily. If we don't take money from the CPA, we need the money for the wastewater. The money has to come from someplace. And if we don't take it from CPA, it's going to come from some other source that taxpayers are going to have to pay for. So if we have to do that, and we're also taking the 3% for CPA, then we're taking the 3% from the taxpayers for the CPA plus the 600,000 that you have in the budget for wastewater from the taxpayers in another,
Right. So,
either you raise the taxes.
well, the default, just to be, most dire worst
Mhm.
case scenario would be, this is exempt debt
Mhm.
and it would just be added onto the tax levy and every taxpayer would pay it.
That's right.
Every taxpayer is paying a surcharge.
Right,
too,
right,
so-
right. But it would be the surcharge plus the 600.
Right.
Right.
But to your point,
Yeah.
why should we revisit this? And the answer is yes, because at the moment, fingers crossed,
Mhm.
we still feel good about 0% financing for the life of the project as opposed to some other amount that's, still small, but not zero. We still feel good about getting some subsidies for the first phases of the project. And, geez, I forget my numbers. I think I mentioned it at the finance committee. But I'd projected, I think, $500 out of the $1,000 cost to the taxpayers. I projected about $500 for debt service.
Mhm.
Right now, we're at like 300 some odd bucks. So we're coming in better. And so if we're coming in better and the WIF 1.5% is generating more than 600,000, to your point, at some point in, 2, 3, 5 years, once we know the actual results and we know what we're getting on the WIF,
Mhm.
we can go back and adjust
The percentage.
appropriately,
So,
right?
so Rich, does this have to go to warrant every year?
No.
It
So,
would go to warrant if we wanted to change,
Change,
for
that's
the
change.
CPA perspective, it would go to the warrant whenever we wanted to change the percentage. Yep. And I was looking just, and it sort of obviously makes sense. I was just looking at fiscal year 28 on the first sheet that you have. And you know, it has, the 668, 603 at the top, which is what, the 1.5%, if that's what, if we were taking in what you're saying, the 3% against the 44 above. So I'm just talking about what the CPA would get. The CPA would get the 668, 503, because that's the other half. And it would get the 108, no, yes, 106, I'm sorry, yeah, I don't have my glass, 106, 559, because that's still coming in. So that would be, say, for fiscal year 28 with these numbers, that comes to 775,062. And so that we would be dividing that 775,062 between the 10, 10, 10, 30, 5, and the remainder.
Or what, yeah, minimums of 10, right?
Yeah, right. Well, we have 10, 10, 10, 30 for housing, then 5 for administrative, and the rest is unreserved.
Right.
I mean, it's undesignated.
Yep.
So everything would be sort of essentially cut in half. About. My other question is, you're using, and we mentioned this a minute ago, the 15.94% for the match. You're using that across the board.
Yes.
We don't really know. It's, as I said, it's been higher and it's been lower. So that's probably going to, and it does change every year.
Yeah.
I looked to see what you were using for the property tax, and that's, you're increasing it, let me see, 2.8% every
It's
year.
based on the actual
Yeah,
multi-year projection that I presented the finance
yeah,
committee.
yeah,
That's what's in those
yeah,
projections.
yeah, the 2.8, I'm just saying that can,
Oh, okay,
that can change too.
right.
Everything in here isn't
Concrete.
concrete. Yeah. Are there, what other towns on the Cape are doing this?
Yarmouth, Dennis, Harwich,
Hmm.
I believe Sandwich.
1.5% or,
No,
No.
Dennis is a 2 and 2. I think Harwich might be a 2 and 1. I can get you the exact, but that's just off the cuff. And
no, yeah, no.
Yarmouth was a 0.57.
Yeah,
They made me-
that-
they made me
when you
calculate
said
something very
that, I thought, oh my God.
They're very precise.
Yeah, yeah. My other question is, if this was put in place and, so people would get their tax bills. And right now it shows the amount of tax that you owe, the real estate tax that you owe. Then they take 3% of that and add that to your tax bill, and that's your total tax bill.
And it shows as a CPA surcharge.
Yeah, right, the 3%. Now, going forward, would the tax bill show the tax bill, what your real estate tax is, then 1.5%?
Yes.
And then the other 1.5% would, how is that
The
taken?
CPA surcharge and the WIF surcharge would each show separately.
Okay, so that would be on the tax bill.
Yes.
Okay, so it would be the 1.5% for WIF and 1.5% for CPA, so to speak.
Okay.
Now, right now, when people want to go forth with as far as concerns about what they have to owe, there's a process that people can go in town here to say they have a question regarding their taxes. Would that process have to be used for both? Both of the 1.5%, or how does that work if somebody?
Know what you mean, but
Yeah, I'm trying to explain.
anything adjusting or abating or exempting,
Abating is what I'm talking about.
on either of those is the same process through the assessor.
So,
So
okay,
if she makes a determination on one, it applies to both.
yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know. So if I thought that I owed less taxes, then it would reduce the taxes, and it would reduce the piece of the 1.5% and the 1.5% for the total, okay. Let me see. Does anybody else have any questions on?
Does this require a supermajority at town meeting?
I think it's just a majority.
Simple majority?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I think you're wise not to try to expand beyond the 3%. As your first go around, I can see that being a incredibly problem. But as you say, people are used to paying the 3%, and if they determine that it's wise to split it, fine. I mean, candidly, we haven't spent all the money we've taken in every year for all the categories.
Mm.
We have basically had money left over every year. So, and the town hall renovation is not gonna happen every year. Schoolhouse museum is not gonna happen every year.
Yeah.
I do think we need to continue funding affordable housing. And they're gonna drop in their allocation. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that. You wanna
Carolyn?
come up here?
Does everybody know Carolyn McPherson? I think everybody does.
I knew that Elaine and Eileen were not going to be here tonight, so
Right, right.
I talked with them briefly. Just a couple comments. I'm not entirely opposed to this because wastewater, as Paul said, one of the things that's inhibiting our housing development is having the wastewater system. So I think that's good. On the flip side, the chart that shows the spending, from a housing perspective, part of what we've been doing the last 3 or 4 years actually is somewhat holding back on housing requests because we knew that coming up was going to be the super big projects of Tea Time and Town Center Plaza. We were waiting for the zoning to get approved, which got approved last year. And I know that there's work underway on the RFP for those areas. And so while the list of funds spent makes it seem that we underspent money, the reality is that we underspent on purpose so that we could be saving that money to have for those projects.
Just want to say, just point out, you're correct. This represents, the 4.2 million represents actual projects completed.
Right.
It excludes, there's a separate line here for town set asides. So
Right,
Those are mostly been housing trust.
Right. Well, not all, but some, yes, you're right. And so I just want to point that out so that you think about that. Yes, the CPC funding is limited to 100%. And we need workforce housing, attainable housing also, which is above 100%. But we desperately need the 100% and below. We, from a housing perspective, I would hate to imagine that we would not be thinking about projects that have both types, all types of housing, both at 100% or below or 100% or above. And so that funding for housing would still come to good use in those projects, both the two that we know of, and then
Mhm.
there are other projects potentially down the line as well. So that's just a comment. We don't, that's all conjecture. We don't know that yet.
I think
So,
definitely, what you're saying, I think probably staff don't think, talking out of school here is on board with the mixed unit,
yes,
mixed,
yes, yeah,
type of housing.
yeah,
But and traditionally, we haven't been able to use CPA for more than 100% AMI units, which was my point, is maybe we spend less, but seasonal communities may change that.
may change that.
So that could be a reconsideration. And then the final thing, and I don't want to open up a can of worms here, but if we needed a big chunk of money, Carolyn, to complete one of the bigger
Mhm.
projects, and this goes back to, reopening things up, you don't need to pay cash up front. I mean, we're probably borrowing for those projects in lieu of having to have $5 million of CPA. Maybe you can have $5 million of debt service to a borrowing from CPA. And if that,
And use the money.
and use the money we
to
have.
pay
And
off
if
the bond.
that's not sufficient, then in a year where we know we're not gonna be sufficient,
Mhm.
we could raise the rate again
Mhm.
to make it sufficient. So there's lots of strategizing and
Mhm.
planning we could do.
Agree 100%. I just have to be the housing advocate for a minute. My only, and putting that aside, I have two questions. One is, can CPA money be used? I know it can be used through the Housing Trust. We have a program for replacing failed septic systems for affordable housing. And could CPA money be used when the time comes for connections for properties that are close to failing with their current septic and they need to connect to the town wastewater? Could CPA money be used with the
To
appropriate under-
help those folks
pay
that
for
are,
those connections?
But just that program is limited to income qualified
Yes, income qualified, right? I
per
understand.
the CPA.
Yes, per the CPA limitations, exactly correct. But it's been a beneficial program, and with residences needing to connect, being required to connect or put a AI in, I'm just wondering if some CPA money could be used continued towards that program with a slightly different bent to it. We don't have to decide that now. I'm just raising that as
No,
a
it's interesting.
question.
We can definitely look into that, but I think the intent is to have, similar to what we have for water, is we do have a water connection betterment fund,
Right.
and have a similar type of fund for wastewater. It's gonna be, we were planning on it being funded, independent of CPAs.
Right. And then the only other comment I would make is that you mentioned that you're hopeful that the bonds that will have to do the debt service for the wastewater, which ultimately we will have to do, will be at a very low percentage rate. So with CPA funds, we're giving up 15 to 18% return on the town's investment because we're giving up the state matching. And so we're buying less debt at low rate and giving up 15 to 18% return on the investment for the CPA money. I just question whether that's
Yeah, well, that's why I
Good.
put on the bottom here, the potential foregone revenue.
right.
So it's probably a little bit more than 15%, and, again, subject to whatever
It's
the
just,
changes
I
are.
was using a low number subject to the,
Well, starting as up to 100 grand in the first year, up to 165, and
Right.
foregone money that,
Right,
so that's, not insignificant.
Right.
right. And so I just raised that juxtaposition of those
It
two.
would be a perfect world is if we could raise that money, get it matched, and then use it for what we need to use it.
Yeah, right, right,
Right,
So that'd be the real magic trick if somehow seasoned
Right.
communities provides for that
right,
somehow.
right. Allow you to do the 3% and then move,
Right.
right,
Give it away up.
right.
right.
Or use the CPA money for allowable expenses to offset things that otherwise the town might have to continue, like the septic
Right.
betterment program.
Yep.
As an example, or supporting the development at Tea Time and Town Center. I just hate to give away
Right. free money.
15 to, yeah, free money is free money. And I understand why
Thank you.
it's,
Thanks, Bob.
you know, from the town residents' point of view, they just see the 3% and they don't necessarily know the behind the scenes stuff of the
Well, they'll know what town
contribution.
meeting.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to my comment.
Joanne.
Joanna, you have a question?
Yeah, just thanks. And I think in terms of paying for like upgrading septic systems of an already existing affordable house or something like that, in a way, to me, it's similar to asking for maintenance for open space that CPA funds bought, and that's not allowed. And so I don't think I've seen any projects like that on the big CPA side of, but I think we as a group and town as a group, you can be creative and think of how we might, projects like that, which we do need. People do need help with improving their septic systems. So how we would sort of approach it if we're thinking it as a CPA project, because it isn't, I think it would, on the face, it's maintenance. So that's a challenge, but we need to do it. I mean, we need to have
Mary
projects
and
available. Thanks.
Joanne and Carolyn bring up a good point. We just received, I think Friday, Paul, the draft regulations of seasonal communities. We haven't
Oh, yeah.
haven't even read them yet, although I know from the synopsis that one of the things is expansion beyond the 100% AMI for housing for CPA.
Mhm.
Paul, maybe it's an opportunity to say, in addition to the expansion, can we expand the uses? maybe we can somehow, get
Yeah.
that in there to, like you said, Carolyn, is, the magic trick would be to get all the money with all the match
Mhm.
and then be able to do it with it as we want.
And you're saying that there might be a way to do that under what you just got last Friday or?
Well, with the draft regulations,
yeah,
waiting
yeah.
on a comment period, so maybe our comments and our
Oh,
suggestion would be.
would be a comment as far as how we would like the monies to be used.
You've proposed that we can use it, I don't know, is it 150 or something like that, or
I think we went for it, 200%.
200? So they're expanding it from 100 to 200% of AMI. It makes the housing eligible for CPA.
Mhm.
In addition to that, can you make these things eligible as well?
Joanna, just for anyone who's listening, the Housing Trust has a HELP program, emergency housing loan program, for people who are income qualified that need repairs to keep their home habitable. And one of those is failed septic systems. So we do have it's a 15-year forgivable loan program for that. So if anyone's listening and they're in that current situation, I just want to clarify that they can be in touch with the housing coordinator, and because we do have a program that will help them with that.
Is that under the program called HELP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But again, that's outside of CPC.
No, that's funded through CPC funding.
No, it's
Well, it's
under-
the CPC, you're right, funding to the
It's
housing.
under the Housing
Trust,
Trust
which
Right.
is- Which
with
is,
funding that came from CPC. It is eligible,
But-
yes.
So
I
it
guess
may
I'm not
be
making
that-
myself clear.
sorry.
It's not blessed by CPC
It,
separately.
it was not separately.
No,
Right.
it's
It
not a
was blessed
separate
by
program that we
CPC.
approved.
Right.
It's being paid for with monies that CPC approved and gave to the
Gave to
affordable.
them
They gave to them.
unconditionally.
Right.
No, not unconditionally.
No, it's got to meet the eligibility requirements of CPC.
So does that
Yes.
aspect?
Mm,
meet it?
Yeah, when we
Okay.
first started the program, there was an application to CPA to use CPA funds to run this program.
Okay.
And then we've come back subsequently over the years when we needed to refill that
Right.
funding for the
Mhm.
I
program.
just want to make sure we're.
Absolutely. We dot every I and cross every
Okay,
T.
very good.
And actually, that program was modeled after
Mhm.
similar ones in Yarmouth and a few others.
Did you have a question, Bob?
I actually have two questions.
Come on, you can come up, and there's a chair over here next to Mark. Everybody know Bob is going to, at some point, when everything is straightened out, replace Ed on this committee, right?
Rich, what does, do you have a feel for the average tax bill for the taxpayer in Eastham, and what does 1% represent?
Yeah,
5,000 something?
I want to say, was it 5,700, Mary, or
Yeah,
5,800?
Yeah, something.
That's the
around
average
there.
tax bill?
Yeah,
So 1% is $570? I
Yeah.
did the math right?
3%, if.
10% is 570, 1% is 57 bucks.
$57. So it sounds like, what was it, Yarmouth did 0.57?
Yeah,
But it sounds like, and we all laugh at the number, but it sounds like they had a dollar amount in mind and they backed in on the percentage.
Yeah.
So if you're doing if you want $600,000, does it make sense to figure it out that way rather than just take 1.5%?
it's an option.
Those are my-
You'd have to do it every year.
No, we just do it once to make sure we got 600. It would likely go up the next year, so we get more. Just like it shows here.
Yeah.
It goes up at 1.5, would go up at, 1.2, or, or whatever it is.
Right, but it wouldn't be as dramatic an overspend.
Overfunding, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we could do that. That's why we come and talk all this out.
What would the extra funds, would they just be held in abeyance?
What do we need them to fund?
Well, you said you needed like 600,000 to,
Oh, so
do
so the WIF goes into its own fund, just like the CPA has its own fund. And it can only be used for certain things, maintenance, repair, debt services included and all that.
Associated with the waste.
Infrastructure
Yeah.
implementation for water or waste.
Wastewater.
Or stormwater, actually, but we're just using it just for the wastewater.
but what I'm saying is, like, in 32, you're gonna have 788,360.
Yeah.
But you say you really only need 600,000. Where is that 188
Well, if we only use 600,000, the 188 would remain in the WIF fund.
Okay.
But chances are that's not what we'd do. You know, because to the extent we don't use that money, that means people are paying higher taxes because that 188,000 that we didn't use raises property tax bills.
Mm.
So if I had 788,000
Mhm.
raised for the WIF, we'd probably use 788,000.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it'd lower people's taxes.
right, right.
Is the reason that there's a surplus in the CPAC now because you've turned down projects or there just haven't been projects?
There haven't been projects.
Or we've been saving money towards future housing projects. One of the
Well,
reasons-
but any money that we've given to you is a project.
Right,
And any money that hasn't been given under that category right now is, well, the affordable housing is $757,000.
But I'm just talking about overall. Dan had mentioned that
You know, there have not been applications.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we very rarely refuse that.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Unless it's obvious that it doesn't qualify.
well,
and
Mhm.
then we've had those. But other than that, we've been fairly diligent to make sure everything qualifies, obviously, and that we have a very responsible fiduciary position on money. It's like our money. And we don't want to spend it if it's not appropriately in a category that works.
that wasn't meant as a,
No, I know.
as a
Yeah,
dig.
yeah.
It was just.
I didn't say it was. I'm just saying, it's a good question and the overall main reason is there haven't been applications. And I'm not sure what we're getting this year. You know, we don't really know yet.
The opposite can also happen. This is a case in another town. Along 6A, there's a lot of historic structures, a lot of historic churches. And they were getting a lot of project requests, so they
Yeah.
had a lot of money they could spend, but it was the same 3 or 4 churches and historic
Mhm.
buildings. And they're like, people started to get in, like, how much have we given this
Yeah,
place through the
right.
last 5 years? It's like, it's getting ridiculous. You know, the roof went, we did that, the bell tower went, we did that, the windows were replaced. It's like, just do it. Maybe you could fundraise on your own and you
Mhm.
contribute some, but,
Yeah.
so people are, getting, if you get too much requests, it depends on where they're coming from, I guess. You want to be equitable in the distribution of the funds.
So I have another question. Obviously, we're trying to fund the wastewater as the best we can, and we're talking about using 1.5% of CPA money. And there are a number of other places that you're going to try to get money to cover it. Are there any other options that you've considered or thought of that aren't on the list for where we might go to pay for this that you hadn't included in the financial scheme of things?
We don't know till we're ready to go. I mean, the first thing that opens the door is getting the SRF project
Mhm.
approved,
Mhm.
which got submitted yesterday.
Mm.
So we're gonna have to get through that hurdle. And then we know we have a project that's accepted and is moving forward. I mean, we kind of know what it is,
Yeah,
but,
yeah, yeah.
but you still got to go through the application process and submit your plan. And then we could start exploring what other options there are, and they come in the form of mostly grants or perhaps loan guarantees from somebody other than SRF. And the most likely candidate for that would be USDA.
Mm,
What's it called? Can't think of the name of the program, but anyway, we got 1 or 2 of the loans for the water project through USDA.
Mhm.
And very comparable to SRF. It's on attractive rates. As a matter of fact, no, that one, the water one, I think is 1%, so not a 0%, but a 1%.
Mhm.
But they'll go out for 40 years,
Mm.
and they don't have the admin fees that SRF has. So that's an option that could reduce some costs. And then other grants through the state, like the MassWorks program, if we can bundle it with some sort of development, like at Tea Time or Town Center Plaza, that's an attractive grant opportunity, I think, for the state. And again, is additional funding through seasonal communities going to become available? That could be a
Mhm,
possibility.
mhm.
So grants, basically,
Mhm.
is what we'd be looking to.
So you're saying you're taking this to the select board on Monday? This
Yeah,
com-
just a similar update, just to
Mhm.
let them know that
Mhm.
I've met with you and the topic's kind of on the table.
Right.
I don't want them to be surprised if they start hearing about it.
And you'll be bringing it to the finance committee.
Right.
After, well, we don't meet until the end of this month.
Right.
So what's the timing for the select board making a vote, a decision?
All right, up till the warrant closes, I guess.
Oh, that's April, isn't it? 1st of April or March?
Usually the end of March.
March,
Hopefully we get some sort of consensus before then, but,
yeah, yeah.
usually the finance committee makes their final votes. You guys usually have your recommendations a little earlier.
Yeah, we'll do earlier.
But the finance committee and select board usually are doing those in March, right? Their
Mhm.
Recommendations and what actually ends up in the article,
Mhm.
around the warrant, I should say.
Are there any other questions from folks here? Yep, okay. Thank you very much, Rich,
Thank
for
you.
not,
Thank-
not only for coming, but for putting this together for us. Okay, I'm just looking at the agenda on item number 3 is discussion on upcoming fiscal year 27 grant round, and I don't have any projects that have come in that I'm aware of.
Nothing.
And so there's nothing there. We don't have any minutes to approve.
What recreation will be submitting
Okay, good.
But not,
For the,
we don't feel it'll be more than $10,000.
is that for the elementary school or, because I think there's something coming in from the elementary
I
school.
would hope so.
Yeah, I spoke to Bill. And,
Yeah, I've been donating my time every Tuesday afternoon over there. Yeah,
Oh, good.
They can use some work over there.
yeah, yeah. I told him to get Linda racking. I have not heard from Linda, but as I say, I spoke to Bill. We don't have any more recent financial information from the past meeting that we had. And I have one thing under other business. I went into the website to pull up the final report form, and I couldn't find it. And I pulled up the final report guidelines, and it says in there that if you want a copy of the final report, form itself, click here. And I clicked here and it says there's nothing there. So I would like to have that final report form either shown under the application as part of the application, but certainly if you're going to have click here to get it. And
Yeah, I see that. I'm looking at it now. So yeah, we could,
there's nothing shows up.
we'll fix the link.
Yeah.
I'd say the past reports are on the webpage though.
I'm sorry?
The past reports from.
Oh,
other
I wasn't looking at that
Oh.
part. I was just trying to pull up the final report form. And when I clicked, it says, we're sorry, but there's not a web page matching your entry.
Oh,
So,
you're right. Yeah,
so-
we can fix that.
so there's no final report form on the town website. Thank you. And I don't have any other business. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to ask? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's Dan, that's
Second.
Did you say a second? And I'll do Dan and then I'll do Ed.
Good, okay.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye, Janet, Joanna. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7?
7-0.
Seven.